at some point or another, you're gonna be alone. And my cousin said something to me one day, and it was very profound. She said, we live with each other. We get along, we go through life. But you're the only person that's there with you from the beginning to the end. Mm. And it was so profound. And it's so true. Like, who's gonna be with me every step of the way except God and me? And I think that a lot of times people like build their lives around their families and around others. And they don't really have a strong sense of self. But once you determine who you are.
Hey y'all, welcome to the Figuring It Out With You podcast with your favorite mother-daughter duo, where we're in an ever-growing conversation with each other and you all, just trying to figure out how to make the most of the life we've all been given.
I'm Kim.
And I'm Kay.
And let's get this conversation started for today. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Figuring It Out With You podcast. I'm Kim.
And I'm Kay.
And let's get this conversation started for the day.
All right, y'all. So today we're going to be talking about how to get to know yourself and maybe what it looks like to set like goals for yourself that are both audacious but also realistic to who you are. Yeah. So first we're going to start with the question of this. Mommy, how do you feel like over time you've learned, like what are some ways okay, hold on. Back it up. What are some things you've done to get to know yourself?
Things that I've done to get to know myself. Actually spending time with myself. I did not really have an opportunity to do that until recently. Because I was a single parent and had 4 children. So my life has been very, very full and busy. But over the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, I've been spending time getting to know me, learning things about me that I did not know about myself. And I'm a very interesting person.
I agree.
Just spending time by myself. I used to always have a desire to be around people, to be in spaces where people are. And now I'm okay being at home alone. Like just doing nothing is like the best feeling in the world. I don't get to experience it much, but when I do get to experience it, I enjoy it. And I realized that after my children became adults, well, all of them aren't, but most of them are, and they have their own lives and their own things going on, I was afraid that I would not even have a life to live. Like, what am I going to do? And one of the most defining moments was, and I tell this story all the time, was when McKaylee graduated from high school, because she told me in January, I'm going to move out. And I was like, well, you got to wait until you graduate at least. And the graduation was in May. So we had a conversation in January. May came. We went to the graduation. I was happy. No, we didn't go to I'm sorry, we did not. The graduation was virtual.
It was on Facebook Live.
It was virtual because of the pandemic. But literally, maybe a day or 2 after the graduation, she had her bags like lined up down the hall. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, I'm moving out. I told you I was moving out. And that was like a very defining moment for me, because I was like, oh my goodness, Malik is gone. Kay is leaving. What am I going to do? Like, who is Kim? Without McKaylee and Malik, Maya, Zachary, who is Kim? And I didn't even know that person. So I would say take time, spend time with yourself, learn what you like to do. I like to read. Well, I used to like to read. I don't get to read so much these days, but I used to enjoy reading a lot. I love to travel. I like to watch documentaries. There's a lot of things that I like that I didn't know until I was able to spend time by myself. So if you're that type of person where you always need a crowd of people around you, you'll never know who you really are, because you're using all of these outside distractions to prevent you from getting to know yourself. So I would recommend you spend time with yourself first.
Or sometime.
As much time as you can. I'm telling you, once you experience the peace that you have of not having to think about anybody else's issues and not doing anything but just what you want to do, it becomes very addictive. So what about you, Michaela?
I would say how I've learned myself, like I think kind of just through trying different things. I feel like I've been blessed to like have like many different like opportunities kind of come up where I can go try new things I never tried before, like going to camps. Like when I was in high school, I was in this club, 21st Century Leaders, and we would have like these camps every summer. Well, not every summer. I did it for 2 years, and so I went to 2 camps, maybe 3, but in the summer only 2. Sorry, and they would be like a week or 2 weeks, maybe. I don't know.
I think it was like a week. They're like leadership camps.
Yeah, and they had like different themes. Like one of them was like business related, and so they would all be like leadership camps. Like we were trying to think about how to like work in groups and how to like get comfortable presenting to large groups and talking with like professionals and like high school and stuff. But like some of them have specific themes. So like the one I went to, like a business themed one, we had to like make a business plan and like a model and do this with the group. And then one of them was like media focused, where we got to tour like CNN and Adult Swim, and that was really cool. And I think at that point for me in high school, that was kind of like a new frontier for sure, because I was like outspoken in groups of people that I knew. And I went to a really small high school, so I knew everybody. So at my school, I was very comfortable. But like in general, I wasn't like the most like outgoing person in the world. And in fact, I was rather like insular towards myself, or more so just like with my group. You know, like with my group, I'm like the most outspoken, but like in new groups, not so much. So it's nice to be able to get experience of like going somewhere for a week and like staying with like a roommate and meeting new people and having to like come up with a unified plan with them and executing it and talking, presenting it to like a room full of like parents and adult like professionals and all this stuff. So that was nice. And then since then, I feel like I just keep trying new things, like going to new spaces, meeting new people, going out of my way to like find things to be a part of, and to like serve and like roles to like help people and serve and just grow myself. So I feel like that's kind of how it's like learn more about me, because also something like most things I've done I enjoy, but then some things I maybe didn't enjoy as much, like even working or like getting certain jobs, like just trying new things. I feel like is how I've learned about myself. But some things I liked a lot and I've continued to do it for several years now, or some things I didn't quite like and I left after like 2 months. But it was like the effort of trying new things, I think that helped me to like see these things. And now I'm just trying to drive that as like a theme throughout my life. Just try things. Like right now I'm trying to explore like my career. I'm like what I want to do, and I'm like, okay, don't just rush into something because you think it's the option that makes the most sense or it's like the most common. Just try things and see what you like, you know. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think I should take a note from the book of Make Haley. I need to try some things.
Yeah. Try it out, see how it goes. Yeah.
But I like that. So, can you talk about some things that you enjoy more than others, or do you remember?
Yeah, sure. So my first job ever, you know, that's just like, I feel like in every state there's that magical age where you just, and I think the age is getting later and later. But for every state there's like that magical age where you're like, that opens all the doors. And for Georgia, it's pretty much 16. Some places will hire you at 15, but I didn't want to work at none of those places. It's really like McDonald's. That's really about it. McDonald's and maybe Kroger. But most places, you have to be 16. And so as soon as I turned 16, I don't know how I heard about this job, to be honest, but I found it and I applied to like, there's this park in Georgia. If you're like in the metro area, you're probably familiar with it. It's a pretty racist history park, like many places in the South, unfortunately. But I worked at this park in like the entertainment department, and that was so fun. Like I started there when I was 16, like in March. I think I started in March, yeah. And then I stayed there for like 4 years. It's like a very seasonal position in the entertainment department because we would mostly do like programming for holidays, like Christmas time. There's like a bunch of shows, and like I was like the usher. And then like some seasons will come around where I would be like a mascot too, where I would like be in like a gingerbread costume or be in like a bunny costume for Easter or just different costumes and like, you know, being a part of a parade and like learning choreography. It was just super fun. I love that job. It was just like, but also when I first started working there, it was also a stretch. Like I had to stretch myself because one of my roles was, and at this time, like I said, it was like back in my more insular era, more shy era, where I talked to people if I knew them, but not really like go on my way to talk to new people. And in this role, one of the things I had to do was that if there was nobody coming to see the show, like there was nobody waiting, or if there wasn't a lot of people, I had to like go into town and basically be like, hey y'all, we got a show happening in 5 minutes. The first few weeks or months even, I did not do that at all. I never did that. If there was nobody, I'd be like, well, nobody was here. Sorry to tell y'all. But then over time, as I got more comfortable, I would do that. And then over time, it just became fun just to like talk to families. I didn't see it as like this like scary thing I had to do, but more so it was just like connecting with other families that were just trying to have a good time at the park, you know? And so it was a real fun job for me. And then my friend was working at this golf club, and they were making a lot more than I was. And I was like, maybe I could work there too, because the job I had, it was, like I said, it was very seasonal, it was very part-time. Like, every 2 weeks, I would get like a $300 check, basically. Because it wasn't that many hours. I was working like 15 hours a week, maybe, at like a strong max. Or like in peak seasons, maybe 20 hours. But most of the time, it was like 15 or less, and usually a little less each week. And so I was like, oh, I could probably work 2 jobs. And I started working at this golf club my friend worked at. It was fine. It honestly wasn't that bad. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I hate this job. But it was very much like a different atmosphere. Like at the park, it was like, I was on an entertainment team of like mostly older people, but also some other high school students. And like, these were people that studied like acting and theater in college. So they were like older, but they were just so fun and like goofy and silly. It was just very like uplifting environment. The worst thing that would happen, it was like, if you're in trouble, you were never in trouble for real. But any bad thing that happened was like, oh, like someone, like a kid is lost at the park and we're all like on alert mode, or somebody steals something in a venue, you got to clean it up. But it was never like, oh, like you're in trouble or anything like that. It was just always good vibes. At this golf club, though, I told them my schedule going into it, and they would kind of schedule me weird times that I couldn't work and that they had already known that I couldn't work. And so I would be like, hey, yo, like my schedule, I can't really work these times. I already told y'all my schedule. And then my friend was telling me that when I wasn't there, they were like saying like, oh, she's never here and all this stuff. And I was like, this job, polishing plates and forks for these palm-colored friends, billionaires, millionaires, that they just come here to have a good time with their buddy old pals, and I barely saw anybody that wasn't white there. It was just like not worth it to stay. I was like, oh, like I don't have to work here. Like, okay, maybe I'm making more here, but I also was barely working there too because I just didn't have so much time. Because it wasn't like me personally. I've never been the type to like throw everything in for like material comfort or something. So like I still had other stuff I was going to do. Like the average person maybe would drop everything else to like make sure they could work. I was like, this job's gonna have to fit around my schedule. So, and if it won't, that's fine too. And I mostly just didn't like she was saying how they were like talking about me when I wasn't there. So I was like, oh yeah, I gotta go. That's like one example of like something I didn't particularly like and didn't stay around for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that I have always admired about you, and I'm sure I've said it many, many times before. You definitely dance to the beat of your own drum. Mm-hmm. Even now, I can listen to her. I've learned not to give advice. I just listen.
I be wanting advice though.
Well, sometimes you want advice.
Even if I won't use it, I try my best to
give advice. But bottom line, Michaela's gonna do what you want to do, and I appreciate that because a lot of times, like when I think about my own life, I live my life according to the standard of what society says. Okay, you need to get a job to work. I didn't really necessarily work a job that I enjoyed. Mm. Even now, I don't think I enjoy my job. I work there because I know I need to. Mm. But I'm transitioning into that space where I'm going to work and do something that I enjoy doing. And you've inspired me to do that. So that's great. But I think that all in all, getting to know yourself, we really don't spend enough time on ourselves. we jump into life. You can ask a lot of 30-year-old people, 40, what do you like? Their life revolves around everybody around them. Like, if I'm not cooking for my kids, or if I'm not there for my husband, or if, what do you like to do for you?
Yeah.
Who are you without, because all of these people, at some point or another, you're going to be alone. And my cousin said something to me one day, and it was very profound. She said, we live with each other. We get along. We go through life. But you're the only person that's there with you from the beginning to the end. And it was so profound. And it's so true. Like, who's going to be with me every step of the way except God and me? And I think that a lot of times people like build their lives around their families and around others. And they don't really have a strong sense of self. But once you determine who you are, you can be a better person for your friends and your family.
True. Yeah. And you can like better like protect yourself too from like disappointment and like all these things that if we were only living for everybody else would be like so much more like constant, like constantly being disappointed or constantly being upset or constantly being all these things.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned. Once I learned it, I felt like I was so empowered. Everybody's not going to respond the way Kim would respond.
Same. When I learned it, I also was like,
I mean, because up until that point, I was so confused. Like, okay, if Susie comes to me and says she's hungry, I'm going to either give her money out of my pocket to buy her food or go in my freezer to give her food for her to take home to cook. I'm going to make sure she has what she needs. And when I would tell people, like, I don't have this, I don't have that, I was always like completely in shock because they didn't respond the way I would have responded. And once I learned that lesson, I'm telling you, it made my life so much easier.
I bet.
Because they can't be me. It's only one me, and I can't hold people to a standard that they're not able to meet. So it lets me be a better friend. It lets me be a better person in general, because my expectation for you is for you to do what you're going to do, for you to respond whatever your response is. And I'm not going to judge you according to your response, because again, my standard is the standard of Kim. So even though you don't respond the way I would respond, I'm still going to show you love. I'm still going to do whatever I can for you, and just know that you responded the way you only you could respond, and it's just like I said, and I know I'm going around in circles saying the same thing, but that was a wonderful lesson. Once I learned it, I felt like that unlocked so many doors for me in life.
Yeah, for sure. Cute. Yeah, that lesson also came in clutch. So I'm glad you learned it so that you could pass it down to me, because I also had a learning curve with that one. What do you mean? People don't live in the Republic of Make-Halia. Yeah. And then too, recently I've been thinking about like in learning myself, like what it means to like not be too judgmental to myself, but also like be able to set, like I was saying, audacious goals. Like, obviously, if we started this world, if we entered this world in the place that we started, we would kind of have defeated the purpose. Like, the point is to grow and learn continuously. And so, obviously, by the time you pass away, you want to be able to see, or at least say that you've grown in some way, or in a lot of ways, hopefully. But, so for me, one of the things that I've been trying to learn about is, like, how can I set those goals that will stretch me further and further, but then also aren't, like, super judgmental to things that are, like, maybe just me, so do you have anything like that you feel like you've learned over the years, like how to like in learning yourself, like things that maybe now you're more, what do you call it, forgiving of yourself about, or Yeah, I don't know.
I think I'm more forgiving with my parenting
Mm.
because and even my children, I feel like up until probably about, like I said, the last 4 to 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced, I would like to say, an awakening.
Mm.
Because I had just really been living life like according to a program. And, you know, as parents, you feel like you're obligated to pour into your children. And I tell people all the time, it's not even the struggle with uh, rearing children is not with the finances. It's not with the money. It's not with do they have the clothes, the shoes, the food. It's with making sure they're decent people. It's making sure they know how to be honest. It's making sure they have a moral compass. Like, don't, if you're in a room and you don't feel right, get up and leave. Don't conform and be in a place that you're not comfortable with. Or even if somebody says something to you, be able to voice your opinion. Speak up for yourself, you know. Because when I was growing up, things were very, very different. They had this saying, children are to be seen and not heard. I used to hate when I heard it because basically you just sit there and you don't open your mouth, you know, and it's like, I hated that. I did not agree with that because children are going to grow up and they're going to be people.
Mm.
And they need to be able to voice their opinion. They need to be able to say what they did and did not like. So when I was bringing up my children, I always allowed them to speak their mind. I would like to hear from you. Let me know how you felt about this. What can I do to be better? And you know, everybody has a job. You know how your employer may send you this employee environment type questionnaire. What are some things we could do better? What do you appreciate about the job? You know, and that's how I kind of implemented that in my home. Because as a parent, like I said, the style that I was raised in was children are to be seen and not heard.
Right.
Why do I have to do this? Why do you have to do it? Because I said so. You know, it's like it was no room for me to be me. And that's probably why I'm just being acquainted with me 5 years ago because I never had to think about Kim. You know, I just jump in, do what needed to be done, and you move forward. But when I was having my children, I wanted them to always know that you matter. Your opinion is number one. Well, your opinion is number one to you. You don't have to force everybody else to agree with you. And to Michaela's point, she had to learn everybody's not going to agree with you, but you still get to feel the way you feel. So I'm raising my children, trying to pour into them as much as I can, trying to make sure that they're decent people. And now when things happen, I get so upset and I always feel like it's my fault. Like, what in the world? I failed. I didn't. I can't believe so and so made that decision. I'm a failure as a parent. And there's been so many occasions, like within the last 6 months, I'm sure, where I've had that feeling, and one of my kids will be like, "No, you're not. That's not your fault. They did what they wanted to do, or I did what I wanted to do." You know, and so I think that's a place that I'm learning to be more forgiving. Because at the end of the day, I can say I am a good parent. I feel like I have really poured a lot into you guys. I feel like I taught you enough to be able to go out into the world, you know, and stand for yourself and stand for what you believe in. So I want to pat myself on the back because I did a good job. And that's a place that I'm learning to be more forgiving because I get in those moments when something crazy happens, I be like, oh, girl, it in my mind, it negates the last 20 28 years. Malik just turned 28.
28.
Oh my goodness. He negates the last 28 years because of one silly incident, and everybody makes mistakes. Life is about mistakes. You know, I make mistakes. There's things that I still make mistakes doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think that's again a place
Yeah.
that I'm giving myself a little more grace.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that.
So what about you, Kaylee?
What about me? I feel like there's a few, but in general, I would say, I would say I'm learning to be more aware of myself, like in my various processes. Like, for example, some of my processes around like relationships and like having crushes on people. And I'm just starting to now see patterns that have helped me be like, okay, even though I still would jokingly say, I'll just jokingly say all these things about myself, like I'm ridiculous, I'm delusional, I'm a fool, like all these things, but they're all jokes because I know that I'm just a person, you know. What's TikTok me saying? Like, I'm just a girl, okay? But I think what's been helping is to like recognize these things, but then not to judge them, but to see like how I can help myself basically like channel them in ways that are like not hurtful to myself or not hurtful to other people or just like helpful or healthy in a way. So that's one thing that's been nice. But then also just like thinking about certain things that are like have been pervasive like my whole life, and like maybe like for example, I feel like this is a funny example, but it's the truth, and so I'm just gonna stand on business about it. One example I think is like my processes around like cleanliness, but also mostly cleanliness, but also related to it like storing things or just like having things. So one thing about myself that I've noticed has been a very pervasive force, I suppose, is that I just like to like keep stuff like from like when I was younger and just like from forever, because I have this idea that it's just gonna be so nice when I'm old and have nothing to do, and I'm just gonna be like able to go through box after box after box. It's gonna be so great. But also, obviously, on the flip side of that, like my room and car can often look bonkers because there's just so much stuff, and like maybe too much stuff to the point where there's not really places to put it. That's one thing. But then also the same vein, I feel like I'm a thrift store queen. I love the thrift store. My mom really instilled that in me. I love it so much.
Thrift store.
But my problem is I'm also like a fashion girly, like in terms of like I love like seeing people try it, be creative with their fashion and stuff. So I feel like I'm constantly like gaining inspo from those around me. And sometimes that can cloud my judgment when I'm in that Goodwill. Because the reality is that some stuff is so cute on other people, but I'm not going to wear it. And so sometimes I can go a little too crazy with the clothes picking up. And so sometimes the clothes in my room also can just be so much. But lately I've been doing this thing because I'm also just so busy. But obviously I know that like busyness is like kind of like one of those things that's like in your mind. Because like you make time for stuff when you want to. So that's one thing I'm like treating with a grain of salt. And that's one aspect of how I'm trying to be more audacious with it. Like, okay, how can I like make this time to like think about my organization and like how I want my space to be, but at the same time, not to judge myself for having a bunch of stuff, or like not to be like, you know, like, oh, like, because I feel like, yeah, everybody just has their different like standards of like what's okay and what's not. And for me, I personally don't think I mind too much. It also might be a factor of like I don't spend so much time in my room. I think if I spent more time in my room, it probably would because I think there are some studies that do correlate like cleanliness of your space with like a clearer mind and just like overall happier. Yeah. And so I do think that obviously if I spent more time in my room, it probably would have a bigger factor. But right as it stands, I generally just use my room to sleep. And for sleeping, it's okay. Like, it's decent. Like, the bed is clean and that's all that matters. But I also want to try to make more time to be at home and to like think about my organization and how I want it to look. But that's one area where I've been like just being less like judgmental towards myself, because it's like, okay, maybe my standard of cleanliness isn't the same as like everybody else's or some other people's. But then also maybe my room doesn't have the same function as their room either at the same time. So like, and just thinking about like what are my needs, but also like who am I? Like, how does that translate into the space I'm now looking at, and letting that be okay, but also not just being like content at the same time, you know, but also being content at the same time.
Yeah. The most famous content phrase, it is
What it is. That's right.
So I appreciate not being content. I think that I'm pushing myself to do more, to step out, to be better. I always just set high goals and standards.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell you, when you were talking, you're saying I'm a fool, I'm this, I'm that. I know you say those things jokingly, but I've always told you, don't say those things.
I know.
We had to really make
It's the media.
we really had to make a conscious decision to speak positive things.
Yeah, that's true.
Because once you speak it out of your mouth, you'll get it in your spirit and you'll become that. It'll manifest. So they used to have this term, I'm dead. Please don't say that. I still hear people say that now, and I tell them, please don't say that around me. Even at work, the younger younger employees, oh, Miss Kim, I'm dead. Please don't say that. I don't want to hear you say that. And I really take those things to heart because I do know that you have power in your tongue. We have the ability to bless or curse. And you just always want to be in a space where you're thinking about, how can I bless myself?
Mm-hmm.
So I am blessed. I am able to make very good decisions. I'm able to control my feelings. I'm not an emotional person. You know, you just have to find a way to make it positive because it's easy to like fall into who I am. Oh, I wish I could lose 20 pounds. Oh, I need $1 million in my bank account. Oh, but what are you saying to uplift yourself? I'm bad. I'm the best. I'm great. I'm amazing. You know, and really feel that because it's once you continue to say it, once you practice that, you'll feel it, and people around you will be able to see it, and it's amazing. So I think that you should work on positive affirmations.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's another way that you can learn yourself.
True that. Thinking about who you want to be.
Yeah, definitely. So who do you want to be, Mikaela? What does the 23-year-old Mikaela look like?
Great question. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. I think that the 23-year-old Mikaela is similar to Mikaela now. She hasn't stopped trying things and seeing what she likes, but she also isn't afraid to make decisions. I feel like sometimes, I don't know if it's just like a 20-something thing or if it's just a me thing. But I feel like sometimes there's like this pressure or almost a desire to not want to make a decision. Out of pressure for having to make a decision, I feel like you need to make a decision. Sometimes it can feel more attractive to just make no decisions and just be like, I feel like it's kind of, you can see it kind of in smaller day-to-day things where people will be like, where you're like, oh, what are you doing at this time? Because you're trying to invite them to something. They're like, I'm not sure, which is called for, I don't currently have any plans, but I want to leave all my options open, which is kind of like ridiculous because it's like, okay, well, if you want to come to this thing, you can just commit right now to come to that thing and then you know what you're doing at that time if you don't currently have any plans. It's kind of like that, but on a larger scale where it's like sometimes it's like, I can do anything. And then it's like, because I'm like, I could do anything, you just don't do nothing, like, you know? So I think I'm getting out of it, but in general, I just want to be able to practice that on a larger and larger scale, like not being afraid to like commit to something, decide something, even if it's like you try it and you don't like it, you just do something else. But I feel like sometimes there's like this like, oh, I don't want to commit to anything that's like more longer lasting or longer term because like I want to keep all my options open, but like that doesn't really mean much if your options being open is just like doing nothing or like not taking steps towards figuring it out, you know?
Yeah. So I hope you guys get something out of this. The takeaways: give yourself some grace. Don't judge. Don't be too judgmental, and figure out what you like. Figure out who you are. Because once you know who you are, you'll be a better person for everyone around you. So drop those comments, guys. How are you figuring it out? Because we're still trying to figure it out with you.
That's right. See y'all in the next one.
See you next time.